I want to welcome you to this presentation on audio-visual support. I think you're going to enjoy this presentation, and some of the suggestions that we make here in this presentation would be real helpful as you set up your different presentation, whether for online or for a live presentation you may make at a conference or to a seminar or even into a training session. And so sit back. I think you're going to get some good tips here and look forward to some of your feedback going forward in the course and hearing your thoughts on how to really support your presentations with the use of good audio and visuals. We're going to look at some appropriate ways to support training through audio visuals. This quote by Barbizet from 2006 is good. It just says, "Visuals show appropriate and accurate images and copy. Visuals support the content rather than replace it." Visuals support the content rather than replace it. I think that last sentence is really something that we need to consider and to take to heart as we put together our presentations, that we don't try to overwhelm people with the visuals that we may use or the slide transitions and things like that, but that it's used to support and to uphold the communication that you're trying to get across with your content, rather than that being the focus, the visual effects being the focus of the presentation. So first thing you want to do adding audio and visual support is to start with your learning objectives and then decide whether or not the content you're teaching would be enhanced with a visual image or through the use of a sound or a drawing or some cartoon or some video clips. You want to select and use audio visual support that respects the copyright of other material. So if you're borrowing something, nowadays they have Creative Commons license, even YouTube is using that now, which will attribute back to the author of the material. But if you're pulling something from an article or something like that, you want to make sure that you provide proper credit and citation to those pieces of material, whether it's audio, visual, or other form of media material, that you're giving the proper credit to that. And also select the right type of image for your objective. If it's a bar chart, comparing magnitude, or a line graph showing a trend, you don't want to get those reversed. You don't want to use a line graph comparing magnitude or a bar graph showing a trend. Use the right ideas there. Same with a pie chart, showing data that's relative to a whole. Symbols used to illustrate complex ideas. Schematics demonstrate process flows. Drawings illustrate functionality in a table, show lists of topics, key ideas, references, things like that. And pictures and cartoons can demonstrate the context, situation, or a specific idea. So really they're just a support, as a framework, as a skeleton for the content you're getting across. So start with the learning objectives, then consider what type of audio-visual support to add to that to support that. Once again, advantages and disadvantages, you just want to be careful. Copyright's a big thing. Make sure you got the proper copyright on that and that you're allowed to use that. With learning and education, there are a few more lenient policies for us, but you just want to be careful. Make sure you do your homework, double check, and check again. Make sure you can use it, or it's in an open source environment, for example, like a YouTube or something like that, or another environment where you can use someone's material. Advantages obviously can really be engaging for your learners, for your students, can help really just do a great job of communicating your point and illustrate in a creative way. Videos do great. Clips obviously do a great job of that, images as well. And then audio can do very well with that too. You can use a clip, an audio clip, or an MP3 of an actual person's voice that you may have to help integrate into your presentation. Have that actual person's voice communicating that content or statement that you want to get across to your learners. Obviously with the disadvantage, talk about the copyright, but then also just the learning curve, being able to integrate some of the audio-visual materials and make sure that we're doing it in the proper way, that we're not using it to take away from the content that we're trying to communicate, that it's not overwhelming for the students either, that it's something they can actually use. It's something that maybe you want to consider as well, that it's cross-platform, can be viewed rather than just on one computer or only on a Mac or only on a PC. You want to make sure, depending on the audience, how you are displaying your audio-visual and what you want, where you want them to be able to view that. Lots of things to consider, and then as well, cost. Do you have to pay for it, or can you use it for free? Does it cost anything to the student to have access to the audio-visual that you're using? Just things like that to consider. Here we'll talk about how to prepare your slides for your presentations. You want to make sure that when you're doing your slides, And if you're going to pass out handouts and things like that, or to your participants in an online environment, maybe you have a slideshow or presentation that you want to make available, make sure that the images that you're using in your presentation support the handouts as well. Prepare your slides that reinforce the directions to your learning activities, for example. And prepare slides with questions to process or debrief learning activities and promote interaction. So in that way, students later, your learners, can take some of those ideas that you may have presented and then look at the questions that you might have on your slide and be able to process and work through those and how they might integrate it in their situation, depending on their environment, place where they're students or the content that they're teaching about. And so those can be effective. In the way that you prepare your slides, you want to make sure that you consider those types of things. And also that when you're doing your slides, that landscape-oriented slides are actually, they're easier to use and easier for your learners to see than a portrait-oriented slide. So just go up under your file and your page setup and select the portrait. It's just an easier orientation for those that are viewing the presentation. You want to make sure that you limit the number of slides. You don't want to have 20, 30 slides, and make sure that your font size is readable. Typically, the literature will say things like 32 points. I've seen 28, 32. You don't want to be gigantic either. You don't want to go too big. And then whether you're using all caps or caps and then lowercase, just like you would in normal writing, consider all those things as you're putting your text on your slides. You'll also want to make sure that you'll choose one type of slide transition as you're going through a presentation, so that you're not doing things that are distracting, that they're getting caught up in the way the slides move back and forth. Those things can, kind of get your audience off track a little bit. And then as far as like the animation for your words, how they pop onto the page, are you trying to wow people with the types of animation that you're doing versus using a standard type of animation for each of your slides with the text on it? These are just some practical things to think about as you prepare your slides, and then also make sure that the number of words on a slide aren't too many. That you've seen some of these slides where they talk about death by PowerPoint, where they try to get so much content on one slide, where really the content on your slide, the words on your slide, just need to be there as prompts. And basically, like the outline, you point 1, 2, and 3, not the A, B, C, and D many times, or you go to a different slide with the A, B, C, and D. The slide is there just to prompt the presenter with what they're going to talk about and discuss. So you could have a script even, or in the notes area of your presentation that you can use and use that rather than trying to put all of that content on one slide. It just becomes so cumbersome even for the audience to look at it. For example, on this slide, preparation of presentation slides, that's it, and then you speak forth the rest. And I think really we're trying to keep the focus on the message, and that's really the point of how you're going to use audiovisuals to support your presentation. You don't want it to take away, but you want to help focus your learners to the content that you're trying to get across, and using the videos, the clips, the cartoons, the images, the audio pieces, all of that to help keep the focus on the content message, the point of your presentation or for that slide. Just make sure to keep that in mind as kind of the golden rule for your use of audio and visual support. And finally, I thought it'd be good to just share some ideas about using color with your text and things like that, even for your slide backgrounds and formatting, if you're going to use color at all for visuals to support your training. Green, a lot of times associated with analytical or precise, brings out opinion, resistance to change, has that kind of a connotation. Blue is considered calm, traditional, reduces blood pressure, easiest to read, so a lot of times you'll see that in text, in web pages and things like that. Red is considered power, the power color, has connotation for impact, impulse, and intensity. Yellow is considered bright, cheerful, hope, a bit restless. Purple, you use that in mystical, magic, irresistible, connotation of delight and lighthearted. Brown, earth tone, being passive, more of a foundation, a desire for home, considered with solid roots, depending on where you're from. Well, these are just a few words of direction on how you would use color in a presentation and just being more purposeful in it, the colors that you use and why you're using them. One thing I did want to make note of is that the way colors are used here, as I've showed you, is for an American culture. Realize that colors have different meanings for different cultures. So if you're presenting in a different culture, you want to understand that first, how colors used, and maybe consider that as you're putting together a presentation. And then also consider your objectives when selecting specific colors as backgrounds or for letters and images in relation to the feeling or concept being projected. Some things just to consider, a little bit more thought given to it, no more purpose and understanding of why you're choosing the different colors for your fonts and backgrounds and things as you go forward in your presentations. Well, this brings us to the end of this presentation on audiovisual support, how to use colors and using images and videos and other clips, fonts, things like that, all that to support your content rather than replace it. Keep that in mind as you go forward. Use these things. They can be very helpful for your learners and kind of break the tension. Not just all text. You want to integrate audio visuals, make sure that it keeps the focus on the message.